So in this video, I'm going to tell you my favorite reasons why I am super excited about discovering the vagus nerve and the fact that you can modulate it. Two major reasons why I'm especially excited are because of the pandemic, and they're hypothetical, but nevertheless, I'll tell you about them, why I'm excited. And then there's additional reasons that I'll mention as well. All right, so what are these reasons? First of all, my name is Dr. Raszek of Neurogenomics, and let's expand on this. The first number one reason why I am super excited about studying the vagus nerve is because of the possibility that the vagus nerve could explain, I'm sliding down the hill, the majority of all of the symptoms we're observing after spike protein injury, such as, say, long COVID. Okay, so, and why is this exciting is because if that is indeed the case, that the vagus nerve could be responsible for vagus nerve injury or reduced proper function, could be responsible for the majority of the symptoms, perhaps vagus nerve neuromodulation could be an easy and attractive way of dealing with those problems. Clearly, I'm very excited about that concept. Look, I'm not naive to think that we have a one solution for everything. Obviously, biology is complex and there can be many aspects affected, okay? But I'm hoping that it could be a major component that can help many people. And I've already made one video on the topic showing how neuromodulation of the vagus nerve was indeed helping people with long COVID reduce the severity of their experienced symptoms, right? So that's by far my favorite reason, because how did I even get to the vagus nerve? This all started with me studying abnormal clots induced by the spike protein. And the series of papers, I made series of videos on this topic. The authors were claiming at the time that this can help to explain a lot of the symptoms observed, but not all of them. And they mentioned that vagus nerve could be involved. And this is basically where I focused my attention. I remember I was even mentioning this on top of a mountain, which, hey, not often do I get to make a video on top of a mountain, where I said, hey, I'm really interested in wanting to learn more about the vagus nerve. And I started to study the vagus nerve and I was really blown away. So reason number one, because potentially this could provide an easy solution to a lot of issues we're experiencing right now because of the pandemic, okay? So there is that. Now, second reason is because possibly the vagus nerve itself could explain the severity of different variants we experienced. Basically, in other words, it could explain the pathogenicity of different variants. Now, why am I super excited about this? Now, this is a little bit unusual in that this links now to information I study a lot of Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche. Now, why Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche is because he early on in the mass vaccination process predicted successfully that we are going to experience a virus immune escape, meaning the virus will evolve in order to dodge the neutralizing antibodies that we were producing as a consequence of both vaccination and infection at the time, depending on how you were obtaining these antibodies. And indeed that happened when the Omicron showed up. Now, since then, the reason why I pay such a close attention to Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche is, number one, is because he connects many different dots of the immune system like I've never seen. I've been studying hundreds of papers over the last few years, scientific papers, and I've never seen any author combine so many different elements as Geert Vanden Bossche when it comes to the immune system. So there's obviously the desire to learn more from his concept, but he also predicts another component to the virus evolution, and he predicts that this virus will evolve towards more pathogenic state. And that's the part I don't like about his prediction, because he believes that many individuals will be affected and that the pandemic is still yet to turn into very dangerous state. Now, obviously, I don't want to just believe in that because I don't want this event to happen. And I've been trying to discover any way to see how I can contradict his theories of whether the virus could evolve towards more pathogenic state. And one element that Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche never ever incorporates into his theories is the vagus nerve. So why am I interested in the vagus nerve, and why do I think the vagus nerve information could contradict his theory, and why it could hint that we will not have more pathogenic virus, is because of the fact that there have been certain scientists who wanted to investigate whether the spike protein could interact with the acetylcholine receptors. Now, acetylcholine receptors is how the vagus nerve propagates its information via acetylcholine that is released by the vagus nerve, and then acetylcholine receptors accept the acetylcholine. Okay, so there is a group of authors that modeled binding of the spike protein to acetylcholine receptors, such as the ones found on the vagus nerve. Now, this is modeling, so I know what you're thinking, like, oh, great modeling, right? How accurate is that going to be? And I agree, modeling can often be inaccurate when it comes to modeling complex systems. So meaning many variables, if many variables are involved, so that could be an issue. But when it comes to modeling on atomic scale, basically modeling how molecules interact with one another, science has got really good at this. We know by now how different atoms could co-interact with one another very well, and this field of science has been evolving for decades. So by now we've got really good at this, at being able to model these processes accurately. So as a consequence, think of it this way: everything in nature, in order for it to interact, is dependent on two factors. Number one is its three-dimensional shape, and number two, its electric charge, because everything in nature, all molecules will have a certain three-dimensional shape and certain charge. So for example, for acetylcholine to interact with the acetylcholine receptor, they have to have a complementary shape and charge, meaning if they're not complementary, they will not interact. So that's important. We can use this knowledge in order to model fairly accurately information on how molecules interact with one another, and that's exactly what was done with regards to the spike protein and the acetylcholine. And it turns out that the spike protein could indeed interact with acetylcholine receptors. We do also know that SARS-CoV-2 virus can infect the vagus nerve. So that's believed that it's likely achieving that via its normal receptors that it typically uses to infect cells, which is the ACE2 receptors. But apparently it could also interact with the acetylcholine receptors. And at that point, whenever you have anything binding to the acetylcholine receptor, it could either lead to its activation or inactivation, depending on basically what it does with that interaction. Okay, but they wanted to see this further, these authors, and what they did is they also looked at how different variants of spike protein could be interacting with acetylcholine receptors. And this is where it gets really interesting. It turns out that the Omicron itself no longer has the same capacity to interact with the acetylcholine receptor as their previous earlier variants that started the pandemic. Now, why is that interesting? Is because earlier variants prior to the Omicron also were causing more severe disease. We all know this already, right? Ever since Omicron emerged, ever since the Omicron immune escape, while yes, everyone got infected, or everyone has the now capacity to get infected, the good news is that the disease severity got dramatically reduced. And now the question is, why is that? Which is, by the way, still an unanswered question. Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche believes it has to do with the blockade of our immune cells transferring the virus from our mouth and nasal cavity down to the lungs. And the way this can be achieved is that certain immune cells can grab sugar molecules on top of the spike protein and use that to transfer the virus to the lungs, where then the virus can cause more severe disease. And he believes that eventually spike protein, right now this is being blocked, this is being no longer, Omicron through its mutations is now capable of blocking that transfer. And he believes that the virus will become more pathogenic when it evolves a new method of having other sugar molecules that will be grabbable, if I can say it like that, by the immune cells and transfer it back to the lungs. That's what he believes. But here's where I would disagree. What if it has nothing to do with the transfer from your mouth to the lungs, but it has to do with the vagus nerve instead? Or both, but the vagus nerve plays the more major role in how we observe pathogenicity previously. So that would basically mean, if that's the case, we might never see that pathogenicity. Why is that? The reason why I believe that is because if it is indeed because of the Omicron, well, Omicron, when it changed itself so dramatically, when the virus, I should say, the spike protein changed itself so dramatically to become Omicron in order to dodge our antibodies with which we were attacking the virus, well, as a consequence, it seems that perhaps it has lost its ability to interact with the acetylcholine receptors of the vagus nerve. And if that's the case, we might not be able to go back and reproduce this pathogenicity. Why is that? Because there is one mysterious thing about the Omicron that no one really knows why, but Omicron seems to have shown out of nowhere. It doesn't have a direct ancestor. And we map the evolutionary map of SARS-CoV-2 virus to the exquisite detail. We literally have sequenced millions of different samples of this virus around the world, so we know exactly how it evolves all the time throughout the world. And we can show how each variant is where it comes from and what other variant preceded it, but not with Omicron. Omicron, there's a big evolutionary gap. It's as if someone took it, tinkered with it, and put it back into our population. And when I say someone, I should more specifically say someones, and that could not just be humans. And I bet you're thinking tinkering in a laboratory. Yes, that's possible. We have that capacity. We know how to do this. This is how early vaccines were being made, by tinkering with viruses in order to change them into vaccines. Well, there's another way of changing the virus, and that's through group of animals by having it in their population. So Another theory is the possibility that Omicron came from another species back to humans, and I've made a video on this. And if that's the case, possibly the versions of SARS-CoV-2 virus that were capable of interacting with the acetylcholine receptor so effectively before, all of those might be extinct, and there might not be an easy way to go back there anymore. Why? Because Omicron is so far different from the previous earliest ancestor of its own kind. That means there might not be a way back. And this could mean that perhaps there is no easy way for the virus to evolve to be more pathogenic and more deadly as Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche proposes might happen. So that's my way of thinking how perhaps we could contradict his theories, which of course I hope so, because no one wants to see more pathogenic version of this pandemic. Everyone wants to see end of this, and we're hoping that we are already in that state. And this is what the authorities are stating, that we are in an endemic state, and perhaps the vagus nerve might achieve that because the spike protein no longer can interact with the acetylcholine receptor to the same degree anymore. Okay, so that's my second favorite reason why I'm so excited about the vagus nerve. Now the other reasons, couple more. Third one is the fact that it establishes brain gut interaction, which I'm very, very interested about. I've been looking into that as well. Vagus nerve could be very easy explanation how you have that axis between the gut and the brain, and the gut itself with all of its microbiome is so enormous in its complexity that in itself is like another brain in our body. So this is a component that I'm really looking forward to studying in the future as well. And then finally, next one is the fact that the vagus nerve could literally be affected in everyone, and every single one of us could potentially be modulating it in order to get it to the ideal state. And I made videos already talking about the medical device NeuroSim, which can be used in order to neuromodulate the vagus nerve function. And I talked about already about it, how it can be used to suppress the symptoms of long COVID or reduce those symptoms. So you can see how vagus nerve could be, and a lot of these symptoms could be present in a lot of different conditions. Basically, these symptoms appear to be common every time I get sick. So then the question is, could the vagus nerve be this frequently affected throughout our life? And to my mind, the answer is yes, because of the fact that this nerve is basically constantly working towards maintaining us in a perfect balance for survival. And that means we can help the function of this nerve to make sure we achieve that. Remember, neuromodulation of the vagus nerve leads to the state of relaxation and the rest and digest state. So that's the state that's part of the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the nervous system that is supposed to minimize the stressed responses of your body that are induced whenever you have to deal with dangerous situation, right? So that's where I'm very much also interested in this nerve, because when I'm, for example, looking at my family members and see how they are affected by different conditions and the symptoms are, I'm constantly now thinking vagus nerve, vagus nerve, vagus nerve. They all think I'm obsessed, and I am. And the reason why is because I'm studying about this and I'm learning like, wow, this nerve could potentially be affected all the time to one degree or another in basically all of us. And then how can we make sure that we can induce it to a proper function? Well, as I mentioned, NeuroSim medical device, it's certified device. If you're interested in that device, then check out the link and and the discount code in the description. Might as well save yourself some money if you're interested in this. So that's another reason why I'm excited. And it's because basically it seems to me like this is a chill nerve. It's a nerve that brings us to a state of relaxation and rest. So very, very interesting stuff. Super excited, and I'm really looking forward to studying further in how neuromodulation of this nerve can positively lead to recovery in a variety of different conditions. All right, that's all I have for you in this video. And I look forward to seeing you in the next installment as well. And I always thank you for your support. Thanks for sharing these videos. That's how we grow. And see you next time. Bye, everyone.